Aloha and good morning, everybody. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, and we're joining you from live stream at eTurbo News in Honolulu, Hawaii this morning. And we're celebrating this month the launch for World Tourism Network. World Tourism Network, you find online at WTN.travel, is emerged out of the rebuilding.travel discussion we had since the outbreak of coronavirus in March, when we had our first meeting actually in Berlin, in Germany, during an ITB that never happened. Ever since, our active group of travel professionals have been discussing the development and the rebuilding of the travel and tourism industry, and now we have our own organization and our own network, currently with members in more than 124 countries, a little bit more than 1,000 members, and we're growing. If you haven't signed up, please do so. We have both paid and free options to join us. Go to WTN.travel and click on join. We had so far, I think, close to 20 events already. You can listen to them and also just going to the same website, WTN.travel, and click on upcoming events and expo, and you'll find a link to the archive on the very bottom. But more important, you can actually attend live. It's very easy to do. Just look at the upcoming events. We have, besides our event right now, we have two more coming up today. They're both quite interesting. One is about the aviation industry. One is about climate-friendly travel. And we're now going to Brazil. We're going to Porto Alegre in the southern part of Brazil, and we're meeting Jose Palazzo, and we'll be talking about marine tourism. I also, of course, and I wanted to understand everyone to understand my partner, Peter Tarlo, is also on this call. Very interesting. Peter and Jose both speak Portuguese. I don't. But we decided to do this in English. But anyways, welcome aboard. Maybe before I give the microphone to Jose, like we always do, I give it to Peter and he can carry on. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Good afternoon from Texas. So howdy, bom dia, if you're listening in Portuguese. I think this is going to be a very exciting session. Brazil is truly one of the up and coming countries when it comes to tourism. And if we're going to be speaking about ecological tourism, this is an area where Brazil has so much to offer. It's a world where there is, you name it, from the Amazon regions to the southern part of the country. I think every form of ecology is found probably within the territory of Brazil. Most people don't realize what a big country Brazil is. If you take Alaska and Hawaii out of the United States, then Brazil would actually be bigger than the 48 contiguous states in the United States. So it's depending on how you count, the fourth or fifth largest country in the world. It touches almost every country in Latin America. It does not have a border with Chile, and it does not have a border with Ecuador. Yes, it does. It doesn't have a border with Chile. But it's a vast land, and I'm sure that Jose will be telling us much about it. So I don't want to take up his time, but we're all really
more than welcome to.
we're really interested in learning about so much of what's there. He's in the southern part of the country now, Porto Alegre, which is one of my favorite parts of Brazil. It's beautiful when you get to the southern part of the country. But he tells me, in Bahia, which is one of the most fascinating parts of Brazil in the northeastern part of the country. Interestingly enough, I work with the police, both in northern Brazil and southern Brazil. So, Jose, wherever you go, I have a cop who's willing to look after you. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, take care. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Jürgen, for the invitation to be here with you. For us, it's a privilege to be part of the World Tourism Network. And I would like to talk to you very briefly about marine ecotourism in Brazil, kind of where we are and what needs to be done for it to be promoted further. And I prepared a small presentation here, which I hope I can show you if I learn how to do it because I'm a Stone Age person type.
Most of us are. So
See, here it is. I hope you're seeing it.
Yes, comes out very clear.
well, now we said yes. Marine
Yes.
ecotourism in Brazil.
Right. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about marine ecotourism in Brazil, which I think it's a full ocean of challenges and opportunities. I work basically as the institutional development officer for the Brazilian Humpback Whale Institute, which is an NGO working on research, conservation, but also promoting marine ecotourism. And I also run a small consultancy firm, which is Truda Palazzo and Associates, specializing mainly in international marine conservation treaties. Well, my home country, Brazil, is here, and it has an 8,000 kilometer coastline. It's certainly much more known for the tropical rainforests, and in terms of ecotourism, the opportunities offered by the Amazon, places like Iguazu Falls, and also the Pantanal, this huge wetland to the west of the country in the border of Bolivia and Paraguay, where you can see lots and lots of wildlife very easily. These are the regions where terrestrial ecotourism is concentrated. But we have this 8,000 kilometer coastline and the adjacent territorial sea and exclusive economic zone, which makes for a huge, huge area, which the Brazilian Navy has dubbed the Blue Amazon, in trying to get more interest from the Brazilian people itself about this territory that is part of our jurisdiction and which holds much promise in terms of sustainable use of its resources only if we learn to use it sustainably. It has several bays and embayments from small to very large, like Guanabara Bay in Rio de Janeiro, several other bays with scattered islands around our southeastern coast, and also in Salvador de Bahia, the Todos os Santos Bay, which is huge and comprised of enormous mangrove areas and scattered cities, towns, small villages, areas to be discovered by the tourists willing to go off the main track. We also have coral reefs in the northeastern region, especially the Abrolhos Bank in Bahia State, which is the largest coral reef bank in the South Atlantic. And as you can imagine, for a country that goes all the way from the North Atlantic equator to the subtropical areas in the border of Uruguay, it is very, very rich in marine biodiversity. We do suffer, however, from an absolute lack of statistics. Among other things, on marine ecotourism or nautical activities, we simply don't have appropriate government statistics or even industry groups trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. We know that thousands upon thousands of people do use the Brazilian waters for leisure activities, and we know it is a rising segment. Marine ecotourism is a rising segment because we're seeing uh, new companies popping up and more people making use of our coastline for more than the occasional dip on the beach. But we do have a lack of public policies to support and help promote and consolidate marine ecotourism as an important economic force in the country. Well, just to brush over some of the activities that are more important in marine ecotourism in Brazil, recreational diving is probably one of the most important. We do have hundreds of thousands of people who are certified over the last couple of decades. Of course, much less than this are really active divers, but we don't have trustworthy statistics about how many people are actually still diving in Brazil. It does support an industry with hundreds of operations nationwide, however, including around the interior of Brazil. We do have mainly family-run businesses who are dive operators. We don't have major companies involved in it. Most of the operators in Brazil are family-run companies. And around the interior of the country, mind you, there are many of this, especially in São Paulo state, which is the big economic powerhouse of Brazil. And these people in the interior do their dive courses, and they dive around abandoned quarries or organize trips to particular parts of the coast. It's virtually a domestic market. There is almost no international tourism for diving in Brazil, which is a shame because there's so much to see yet. But I suspect that the cost of coming to Brazil and other hurdles, like we were talking earlier offline about the obstacles of Brazilians not speaking much English, and that also prevents major international markets from being open for things like diving. Also, the environmental degradation of our waters and overfishing are actively destroying many dive sites, including around Rio de Janeiro, places like Arraial do Cabo, north of Rio, which were major shark watching locations, unfortunately have been fished out. And this is something that we haven't been able to sort out properly in Brazil with sustainable fishing policies yet. In this environment, marine protected areas have played a big role in the development of diving, and many of these continue to be strongholds for continued activity for recreational diving. These islands you can see on the upper right side are the Abrolhos Islands, a national marine park, the first national marine park established in Brazil back in the 80s, and which sits on this huge coral bank in our northeastern part. Unfortunately, the park only covers 1.8% of the coral bank. We've been fighting to increase it to at least 10% so we can protect it from overfishing. More recently, artificial reefs have become also a thing in Brazil. In Recife, one of the main capitals in the Northeast, an artificial reef park has been established, which is drawing divers from all over the country. And in this picture on the right side below, you can see a ferry boat that's been sunk just off Salvador in Bahia. There is a new artificial reef park being established there with all the safeguards, environmental safeguards being put in place. This decommissioned ship's been all cleaned up and prepared for this. And as you can see from the picture, it's really close to downtown Salvador, so it will be accessible to all. And that's one of the ideas of new artificial reefs being put up along the coast of Brazil, providing for taking pressure out of natural reefs, but also providing for people from all walks of life, all levels of certification for diving, being able to visit these places, which congregate a lot of marine life once they are established. One of the challenges we have for diving in Brazil to be really considered marine ecotourism is that in many cases, good interpretation, environmental interpretation, and best practices are lacking. People go out in water, you have good safety standards, but still environmental interpretation could be much better in most of the operations. And this is one of the challenges we have for further development of the diving industry in Brazil and for it to be considered as real ecotourism according to international standards. The other success story we have in marine ecotourism in Brazil is whale watching. Countries like Brazil were either whaling or supporting whaling up to the 1980s around Latin America. The last whaling station in Brazil closed down in 1985. And whale watching was and the promise of whale watching was one of the reasons why many Latin American countries abandoned the pro-whaling bloc and started promoting non-extractive uses of whales instead. Nowadays, the Latin American group called the Buenos Aires Group is the most important pro-conservation force at the International Whaling Commission. And slowly, when Brazil abandoned whaling, we were able to start showing people that whales could be seen in different areas. Populations which were brought to the brink of extinction were slowly recovering and reappearing. And then we were able to interest different communities to start working on this possibility. For Brazil, this is very important because the main whale species that are watched, humpback whales in the northeast and southeast, and southern right whales in the south, they come up to breed in Brazilian waters during winter, which is when most of the tourism infrastructure along the coast is empty and unused. So the recovery of whales in Brazil is offering a second tourism season in winter for many of these communities. Southern right whales show up especially in the south, in Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina states. And they can be watched, as you can see from these pictures on the left, right off the coast. Southern right whales are amazing. They come up to 30 meters from shore during breeding season, and they have their babies in the local bays and embayments around Santa Catarina and stick around between July and October, which is also the season for humpback whales. Humpbacks, which are portrayed in these pictures to the right, they have survived whaling through a very small population that happened to be around the Abrolhos coral reef bank. And they are now spreading back to reoccupy most of the northeast coast and also parts of the southeast. Watching these species is basically boat-based. We have now more than 16 local community operators who are partners to the Humpback Whale Project. In being partners, it means that we help promote capacity building and we develop environmental interpretation with their local guides and boat captains. And we also help them promote their businesses through our social networks and websites. The picture up there with that schooner is from Praia do Forte, where I live near Salvador de Bahia. And the one on the lower right side is from Porto Seguro. And fortunately, these animals are also spreading down south to the southeast. And a new hotspot for whale watching is now Ilia Bella, which is very close to São Paulo, our main metropolis in the country. The revenues from whale watching, both for the companies and for the communities where they exist, are now in the millions of dollars. For humpback whales, we counted in 2019 the first $1 million earned by these different companies that we work with, and most likely in Santa Catarina because it's coastal. It's more difficult to check, but it's in the thousands of people coming up in winter to see them, and also lots of revenue being earned by the community. Of course, most of this before COVID, and but there's a good chance it will recover once we get a vaccine and get the economy going back. I'd like to spend a little more time in Ilia Bella, this place I talked to you about, because it shows the potential of unexplored areas around the Brazilian coast for ecotourism. And in this particular case, you can see this is the big island of Ilia Bella, which is mostly a state park with beautiful, beautiful Atlantic forest and lots of opportunities for whale watching. And this blob here, this cream-colored blob, is the metropolis of São Paulo, largest city in Brazil and one of the largest metropolises in Latin America. And still, by driving 1.5 hours about that from this huge bustling city, you can get to Ilia Bella, which is all forest line, coastline, and where a citizen science project, Projeto Baleia Vista, which is run by a local businessman, Julio Cardoso. Over time, he's got his powerboat out to watch marine wildlife and started taking pictures. And by doing so, he discovered that it was a hotspot for several species of dolphins, for humpback whales, which were showing up there too, not only in Bahia, orcas, killer whales, for the most endangered marine dolphin in Latin America, Franciscana, which is here in the lower right corner, and also Brood's whales or tropical whales, which are also showing up there with babies. Also manta rays, sunfish, all sorts of seabirds. So single-handedly, Julio Cardoso and his partner, biologist Arlene Francisco, doing citizen science, have discovered a marine biodiversity hotspot just outside Sao Paulo. This is really, really amazing and shows great promise for the development of marine ecotourism in an area which has all the infrastructure for doing that. It has the airports, hotels, and also small tourist companies which are now investing more in training their guides to make use of this fantastic opportunity just in the doorstep of this big metropolis. Another thing that is promising is watching marine and coastal birds in Brazil. It is very incipient, but more and more people, mostly associated with bird watching clubs, which are having this rebirth all around Brazil for some reason now. These people charter boats and they're going out more and more to see seabirds. This picture of the albatross on the left is from Julio from the same project that I told you about in Ilia Bella. In one day, they've seen more than 100 albatrosses from different species in winter. And the other pictures of coastal shorebirds is from a national park in southern Brazil, Lagoa do Peixe, very near where I am now. And it's one of the main stopping points for migratory birds coming all the way from the Arctic. Thousands upon thousands of shorebirds offering this fantastic spectacle in remote beaches. And this to me is one of the small sectors of marine and coastal ecotourism which holds great promise in Brazil for growth and for providing additional jobs and income for coastal communities. I'd like to highlight one example where marine ecotourism is doing very well in Brazil and has been doing that for more than a decade now. It's the archipelago of Fernando de Noronha, which is some 200 miles offshore from northeastern Brazil. It's been declared a national marine park and also a World Heritage Site. I had the privilege of being involved in both campaigns there. And it has received in 2019, before the COVID crisis, a little more than 115,000 visitors. The archipelago receives a little bit more than that because you have to pay a fee to get into the park. The park covers roughly 3/4 of the main island of the archipelago. And it's very famous in Brazil, not only for the pristine beaches, but also for a resident population of spinner dolphins, which, like in Hawaii, Jürgen, they can be seen congregating daily in the very same bay most of the days of the year. And people are really, really enthralled by the presence of these dolphins. It also has very good diving opportunities, not much in terms of true coral reefs, but it has lots of coral species and sponges, and also pelagic marine wildlife that is still there despite the overfishing that's happening around it. Why has Noronha been resilient and so successful? Especially because the federal government has given concessions of public use in the marine park, and it's working pretty well. The company that took over the concessions has rebuilt the trails, put up souvenir shops and interpretive signs, given proper training to the native people there to develop environmental interpretation. So concessions of public use in Brazilian protected areas is something surprisingly new, and it's been fought against by many people who don't like the involvement of commercial initiatives in protected areas. But it's been a cornerstone for the protection of these areas and for the recognition by the Brazilian public at large as something special and that can be used by people through visitation and the development of tourism. So Fernando de Noronha is now very successful in great part thanks to the concession system, which is now slowly being applied to other national parks. Iguaçu Falls is one which is also a long-term one that's been a particular success in terms of public concessions. And we have all sorts of unexplored frontiers in the Brazilian marine jurisdiction for marine ecotourism. In particular, our oceanic archipelagos. During the last government in 2018, President Michel Temer was prodded by Dr. Sylvia Earle, her deepness and the greatest international character in marine conservation, to protect our far offshore oceanic archipelagos of Trindade and Martin Vaz, which is shown here in this picture with the catamaran. That's Trindade Island, more than 1,000 kilometers off our southeastern coast. In San Pedro and São Paulo, previously known as St. Peter and St. Paul Rocks, way off Fernando de Noronha in the northeast. These are areas which combine the opportunities for marine wildlife watching, birds, dolphins, sharks, diving, and could probably be the base for an international standard live aboard tourism in Brazil. And in the south here, again, near where I'm staying right now, we have the Albardão region in the extreme south of Brazil, near the border of Uruguay, where this beautiful lighthouse is. And this beach that you are seeing full of shell fragments is actually the largest paleontological area along the Brazilian coast. What happens is in this area, as in many other parts, the sea has gone up and down over the last few millennia, and it has formed. This is an area which is very remote. It's a 300-kilometer sandy beach with almost no one there. It's really beautiful scenery, and the sea bottom there, which is mainly sandy, in this area, this particular area in Albardão, has formed some consolidated sedimentary rocks. And in these rocks, you have not only fossil shells by the millions, like this that you were seeing by the beach, but also the bones of several fossil mammals. And when you have winter storms, parts of this break up and end up in the beach. So it's a very important paleontological site, which could do for a very nice museum and also for migratory bird observation and tracking. And it's an area which, together with friends in Uruguay who are working to protect their own marine biodiversity, we are now in the middle of a campaign with other NGOs in Brazil to turn it into a national park, with the idea of protecting its remoteness, but also putting it to use to generate jobs in a region that very much needs it. Well, as we all know, this has been a horrible year for tourism everywhere, and Brazil was no exception. And all this that I'm showing you that has been going on and which shows promise for growth in Brazil has basically been stopped in its tracks by the COVID crisis. And unfortunately, for many reasons, it's easy to blame it on the government, but for many reasons, including cultural ones, and the difficulty of making people understand the gravity of this, of the seriousness of this crisis, we have been very slow in responding to it. And unfortunately, now we're suffering the brunt of the second wave of COVID in Brazil as we struggle to get the vaccines approved and starting to use it to make the economy recover. So one of the first things we need, just like everyone else, is better nationwide COVID response, more coordination, and especially more efforts to put in place protocols so that the ecotourism companies, which are, as I said, are mostly small and struggling with the closing of our economy, can get back on their feet and continue to do their immense contribution, not only to generate jobs and income, but also to protect this natural heritage that they use. We do need more marine protected areas, not only to establish more such areas, but also open several of the ones that already exist to ecotourism and to public use concessions. We do have many wonderful coastal MPAs, which are strictly off limits to everyone but researchers with permits. And to my mind at least, and to what I learned in Brazil in this 40 plus years of working on conservation, these areas could easily be turned into national parks uh, and not strict biological reserves, and contribute not only to job generation, but also help protect them better, because many of these places lack the basic resources to fight poaching, illegal fishing, and intrusion by non-tourists who are getting there to use its resources illegally. We do need further promotion of these opportunities and capacity building. At the Institute, we have been modestly trying to do our part in terms of whale watching, but much more is needed in terms of preparing guides for environmental interpretation, of supporting these local small companies in providing this interpretation to their clients, and also in finding new markets, not only in Brazil domestically, but also internationally, figuring out ways of going around the hurdles of being operating in Brazil, which include extremely high taxes and difficulties in bringing tourists from abroad. In, in the whole, trying to consolidate marine biodiversity as a key tourism asset for the country. Not only Carnival, not only the beaches, not only the Amazon or the Pantanal, but also look into the sea as something more than the dip in the ocean when you go to the beach. Look into this fantastic marine biodiversity that we have, and making sure that we can promote it wisely as one of the main tourism assets in the country. And I have included this picture to the right, which is me with the new tourism minister, Gilson Machado Neto, who is a good personal friend of mine, but also an accomplished captain. He owns a sailboat, he is a diver, and he is absolutely committed to making sure that marine ecotourism becomes part of the Brazilian international tourism portfolio. He also faces several hurdles there. This is not an easy country to be part of the government machine, but we have Gilson there, and we are very hopeful that he will do his best to put our ocean back into the tourism picture. I've talked a lot already, and I want to thank you for this opportunity. I became my professional life working with marine tourism, actually as a marine conservation activist. And I do believe that marine ecotourism is a force for good. It provides jobs and income for entire communities, especially along the developing world, through non-extractive uses of marine biodiversity. I'm hopefully putting out next year a book about a review of this in a global scale. It's called Living Water, Marine Ecotourism, Communities and Conservation. And I think it's up to all of us who work in different ways with the tourism and conservation segments to make sure that we can promote marine ecotourism, improve it as much as we can, and especially protect it. Protect it against the destruction of its key element, which is nature. Many times I've seen in my home country and other places, marine ecotourism being hampered or prevented by overfishing and other destructive uses of our marine heritage. And we all have to work to make sure it doesn't happen. That's my grandson there, João Pedro. And we featured this picture in a newspaper article by The Guardian earlier this year about the ocean, the Ocean Week. And if for nothing else, for the future generations, we have to make sure that marine ecotourism succeeds. Those are my contacts for anyone willing to contact me and share their ideas and information. And if I can be of service to any of you who are watching us, I'll be more than happy. Oh, Jürgen, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'll be here for us to chat a little further if you so wish.
Well, really fantastic. So I think one of the big issues is that, oops, I just lost you. Did you go away?
No, he's there. He's there.
Okay, somehow all the pictures lost from my computer, but you can hear me, so that's okay. Brazil has so much to offer, and so few people around the world think of the aquatic parts of Brazil other than the Amazon River, and that they usually have fear about. So I think this is an area that really the world needs to expand radically. And if we're able to show how much Brazil has to offer the world, this, you're right, this would be a wonderful economic tool for Brazil to help so many poor communities that really are looking for a way to restructure themselves. So congratulations, that's really well done.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. I mean, it's we hear so much about Australia and the Great Barrier Reef and everything else in the world, but this is new to me too. So, and I really think yes, this needs to go out, especially in our new norm or normal we're building. This
Right.
could have a major part. I wanted to recognize we have two visitors, and I know both of them. We have Snow White, we call her. She's
Yes.
a professor in Serbia, and she's leading our educational panel for World Tourism Network. Welcome, Snow White, right? That's what you want me to call you. It's
Welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
It was excellent, really. I've heard so many new things, and I'm thinking, how much do we have to learn about ecosystems, marinas, and all of that? And for example, Serbian people, Serbia is a rural country. We don't have any sea.
Mhm.
And Serbian people like to travel to the countries with the sea, and they like to travel where it is nice and hot. And I'm thinking about tourist guides, how much they have to learn about these areas uh, and to present them to their tourists so the tourists can enjoy. So it is also a part of education as well.
Yes.
I'm really thrilled what I've heard tonight because it's really excellent. Thank you very much.
No,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And thank you for attending. She also has been attending, but the absolute record in attendance is Stephen Brown. He's joining us from New York, and I don't think he has missed a session yet.
Oh, wow.
No matter what time it is in New York, no matter how bad the weather is and how bad Corona or good it is, Stephen is there, so we can rely on him. And
Thank you.
thank you,
pleasure.
Steve.
Even you're expecting a big snowstorm tomorrow in New York, aren't
Oh,
you?
wow.
No, at the moment.
It's snowing
Wow.
now?
Yes, it started.
All right,
I'm,
well.
I'm glad they didn't prevent you from attending.
Well, then, Stephen,
Thank you.
this is a
Not
great
at all.
session for you. But maybe what you need to do is get on a plane, leave New York, get down to Brazil, and help Jose work on ecotourism in a really beautiful part of the world where it's warm. It's going to be summer.
I would love
It-
to.
You would
I
be
wished I could.
more than welcome. More than welcome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I just want to extend to everyone the invitation I made to Paul and Jurgen. I live in Praia do Forte, which is 50 minutes from Salvador de Bahia. I'll be more than happy if any of you come our way and get into my corner of the woods. It would be great to meet you and take you around a little bit.
Well,
Jose,
thank
could
you.
you put on the notes over there at the very bottom your email address so that people?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and Peter, it's probably easier even we're going to archive this, and then if you have a contact form, if you go to our contact form at wtn.travel, just tell us it's for him, and we'd be happy to forward it. But of course, you can always look at the archive and see the email address, and it's on the chat part now too. So if you wanted
Yeah,
to
it's there.
highlight this, and of course, we also would love to invite you to become active or help others to become active in WTN. Our organization lives on interest groups, like what the professor from Serbia does. She leads our educational forum, and we don't have anything what deals with marine life.
Zero.
Zero. So that would definitely be an
Zero.
interesting discussion, and we really have and then all these different discussion groups can interact. So that
Oh, absolutely.
makes it worthwhile. So just let me know, and
So
we would love to have
I
you
would
on
I would
board.
love to help. As Jürgen knows, I'm just out of a pretty long process of dealing with some health issues, and I'm trying to reorganize my life for the next year, from now until the holidays. So I'll be more than happy to start a little group to deal with marine ecotourism if other people are interested, and I hope that you can count on me more frequently. And I haven't been a very active member, but I hope to do better by next year.
No, and I mean, health comes first, and we want you to be absolutely healthy and in good shape, and stay away from Corona and everything else. And yeah, we can definitely pencil this in. We can say that we're going to announce such a group, or we can add it to it. It doesn't have to be from one minute to
Right.
another. We're building this organization, and
I
your
think it is
subject is
very,
quite
very
fascinating.
important. I think it's very important, because one of the things that I learned when I was researching for this new book I'm putting out in Australia next year is that marine ecotourism is much maligned by academia.
Right.
You read a lot of papers, which title is the impact of whale watching, the impact of diving, the impact of looking at living things. And when you start to grind it down and looking at the methodologies and what people are doing in terms of sorting out what's really an impact, much of it doesn't hold water. Sorry for the pun.
Right.
But in
It
whale
actually
watching,
has a
for
lot of
instance,
water.
yes, in whale watching, for instance, people have been putting out academic papers about the horrible impacts of whale watching on large whales for the last whatever many years. Well, mind you, large whale species like humpback whales and right whales have sustained intense whale watching in their breeding areas for at least 40 or 50 years. In the case of Patagonia in Argentina, for 50 years now. And their populations continue to grow,
Yeah.
and they keep going to the exact same places. And if anything has changed, is the fact that they are more and more curious towards the boats. So what is an impact? What constitutes an environmental impact? And what is the cost benefit if, without causing a real environmental impact, you let people interact with marine wildlife? How much does that impact conservation policies and ensures that marine biodiversity can survive in the long run? Those are the things that I explore in the book a little bit, and I think it will be a fascinating topic for us to discuss in a
Absolutely.
focal group.
And we don't really know if it's whale watching or if the whales are watching us. It's people watching.
Oh yes, you do. Yeah, they do come out and look at us.
Yeah, so they may be just as fascinated by people as we are by whales.
Most
Um,
likely, yeah, they're definitely inquisitive.
But I think the other side of that, which you pointed a really important point, is that very often we degrade the value of 80% of the earth, which is the oceans, or 70% of the earth. And my university is the Center for Underwater Archaeology. And
Right.
again, and this is really the home of underwater archaeology. And yet archaeologists tend to ignore archaeology unless it's on land, unless it's terrestrial. And so it's very much the same issue. We tend to think of ecology as only being on the land. We don't think of it as the ocean. We often exploit the ocean for ways, including Brazil. I worked on the 2014 and 2016 Olympics in Rio. And one of the
Correct.
big problems was the pollution that was in
In
the
the
ocean.
bay. Yep.
We couldn't put many of our athletes into aquatic sports because of the
It's
fact that it would,
bizarre. You have fridges floating around.
yeah, and we had some dead bodies floating around. So it's really it was a perfect example of how that's one of the most beautiful bays in the world and how poorly it was being kept.
Oh yeah.
So your work really should go beyond just the whales. I appreciate that, but it should be for the whole ecology of the ocean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah. Well, this was a very good session, and hopefully, as I said, we love to work with you and make you part of our initiative. And thank you so much, and thank you for everyone to attending. I wanted to remind everyone we have some really interesting discussions besides this one coming up, two of them today. One at 7 p.m. Hawaii time, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, 5 a.m. London, 10:30 a.m. in Delhi, 12 p.m. in Bangkok, 2 p.m. Tokyo, and 4 p.m. in Sydney, just to give you some examples. This will be with Professor Jeffrey Lipman, who has been a good friend of us for many years, and he'll be talking about climate-friendly travel, and he's bringing a panel to this discussion. He currently runs SunX in Belgium and Malta, also very much involved in conservation and other things. Right after this, a little bit just about at 9 p.m., that's 2 hours pretty much back to back, at 9 p.m. Hawaii time, 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 a.m. in the morning Eastern time, Stephen.
What are you getting up there? Stephen, do you sleep?
We're going to
Snow will
challenge.
still be falling.
That's 7 in London, 12:30 Delhi, 2 p.m. Bangkok, 4 p.m. in Tokyo, 6 p.m. in Sydney. I think we have something we all have been looking forward to, a discussion with Vijay Ponosamy. He brings an excellent panel together about the aviation challenges. Vijay is a expert, one of the best you can find in the world in regards to aviation. He has worked with Etihad Airways in Abu Dhabi for many years as a VP. He is originally from Mauritius and lives in Singapore, works for a consulting firm that deals with aviation. And I heard the rumors that he wants to run for ICAO president, and I think he has a good chance. So he'll be bringing a really interesting panel together. So you shouldn't miss this. And then we go on tomorrow with international recovery through local regeneration with Benjamin Carey. After this, we have a discussion tomorrow about boomer woman travel. And we're closing the day tomorrow night, Hawaii time. That's already the next day in the rest of the world, about inclusive sustainability, education, emotional well-being. Also with the discussion with Greenheart Consulting in the UK. And there will be more events coming up for the following days, including about Jordan, Bermuda, Iran, Nigeria. And then we'll be closing this year with two really, really interesting sessions. One with Louis D'Amour, the founder of the International Institute for Peace Through Tourism. It's his second session. His first session was about the 35 years he's been running this organization. The next session will be what is next. That's going to be an international panel, and we'll be closing this year with our good friend Marisar Donato. She's with Washington Tours and Events and involved in the World Federation of Tourist Guides Association. So we're going to bring tourist guides from all over the world together on this panel, and they're going to be talking about their challenges and their role in the tourism industry. But more important, we're going to say goodbye to COVID. It has on that day, there's going to be 100 years when we said goodbye to the Spanish flu. Now it's time to
Which
say
had nothing to
goodbye
do with Spain, by the way.
Yeah. So it's time to say goodbye to COVID and start this New Year's with something fresh, and so we can finish our rebuilding. So this is what's coming up here. There are more events possibly in the making, and I invite everyone to go to WTN.travel, click on upcoming events. We're updating it. For instance, the Bermuda and Iran event is not yet up, but it'll be up soon. But in any case, I wanted to say thank you, Jose, again for doing this. This was a very, very interesting discussion. And I give the last word to Peter. Aloha from here.
Once again, José in Portuguese, José in Spanish. I want to thank you for all your time that you spent with us. You really have a mission to do, which is more than just, I appreciate what you're doing for your own country, but you're doing it for the whole world. And this is an area which is so underrated within the world. People don't pay attention to it. And so this is part of that hope that I think Jürgen spoke about. As we bring 2020 to a conclusion, I think all of us are more than willing to say goodbye to 2020. But let's hope that 2021 is a much better year, a year that we're going to all be able to create new, interesting, and fascinating ideas about the world of tourism. And if we can do that and use some of the innovative ideas that you're speaking about, then that's going to assure that 2021 is a hell of a lot better than 2020, and that we can turn this decade from one of negativity to one of positivity. So thank you, muito obrigado, for everything.
Obrigado. Let's work for it together. Thank you
Yes,
very much,
exactly.
guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.